When I decided to go all in into Tesla stock, it was for one reason and one reason only: autonomy. I know that whoever solves full self driving, robotaxis, cars driving themselves will become the world's most valuable company. But today I learned that there's even a bigger opportunity than robotaxi, which is humanoid robots. I had the pleasure to speak with a co-founder and a CEO of a wealth management company that does deep analysis, and I couldn't find anyone else better than Cern Basher, who explained this to me like as if I was 5 years old. And if you guys don't know how to value this bots, this Optimus, this humanoid robots, it's going to change today, because after this, I learned a lot. I understand it, and so will you. Quickly, guys, I do recommend you guys go follow him on X, link in the description. Smash that like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get into this juicy podcast. Let's go. Cern Basher, awesome. Thank you so much for coming on my channel. Honestly, some of the work that I've seen you do on Herbert's channel, even on X, absolutely amazing. And when it comes to the bot on my channel, mainly I'm in Tesla stock because of robotaxis and autonomy. Not so much for the bots. And even when I do sit down and try to do an analysis on the bot, I get a headache afterwards, and I just end up looking in the horizon and just thinking, is this even possible? Does the market cap even make sense? Does the money supply even supply? Because the numbers get so big. So I had to bring you on and just explain to us how your view is on the robotaxi, because I know that you run a wealth management fund, a firm called Brilliant Advice, and I know you do these research pretty much on a daily basis. You absolutely know much more than I do. I hope that I learn how you can teach us what the bot really is,
Absolutely. And thanks for having me on. And I must say that before I started looking at the bot, I had a full head of hair, and I've fried all the hair off my head in thinking about the bot. So yes.
Oh my God. I mean, that's why I've stopped looking at the bot. I'm just going to wait until I see actual numbers from it. Then I can, get into it. I mean, just the robotaxi, we're not even getting any real numbers from it yet. But I kind of understand it. The bot is just out of my ballpark. I just can't. And that's why we have you. So before we start, Cern, I just have a couple questions. How long have you been researching Tesla? Because the way how I see you doing these numbers is just, it looks like you've been doing it forever.
Yeah, and actually that's not the case. It's now been probably about 3 years only. And I must say that to my detriment, I was in the camp that I think a lot of people still find themselves in, where I just didn't believe anything that Elon said. I didn't believe the story. I didn't understand it. And I finally took the time to dig into it. And admittedly, it was a bit late, but once I dug into it in earnest and really put some time into it, I began to understand and see the opportunity.
Wow. So 3 years ago, and let me guess, you started with the I bet it was the robotaxis and the autonomy, and then you went into the bots, right?
Yeah. I guess it's 4 years now. It was really early 2020.
2020, so 4 years now. Yeah.
4 years. Time flies when you're having fun.
That's so true. That's so true. No, that's funny, because I started my investment journey in Tesla in the beginning of 2020, because I finally saw that they're actually cash flow positive for the first time. And it's a company that I was always interested in. I'm just like, okay, now the risk is off the table. Now it's time to put some investment in. And then that was history. But then that's when I also started taking Tesla more seriously, looking into I'm not too sure if you're too familiar with my channel, but I'm known as the guy who's going all in into Tesla stock. Like, my whole entire stock portfolio is 100% Tesla. And the reason for that is because of autonomy. When I ran the numbers for autonomy, the numbers were just like, okay, it was just too crazy not to. I mean, just the risk adjusted.
Yeah, the opportunity, I guess, adjusted
opportunity.
For the risk. Yep.
Exactly. Was just for the long term, was just, for me, a no-brainer to just go like, you know what? I don't need this money in the next 3, 4, 5 years. Put it in. I think by end decade or even mid 2030s, I think we should be okay. I think we should be beating the market and coming out with a whole bunch of money.
Yeah, and I must say today that, as an investment professional, nothing I say here is investment advice.
Yes.
But I would also say that there are lots of interesting reasons for looking at Tesla and potentially investing in Tesla. The robotaxi opportunity is certainly one of them, and one of the larger opportunities. But I'm here to tell you today that there's even a larger one than that,
which is the bots, which I don't understand. So we're gonna get into that. Okay, great. Well, I know you're a wealth management, well, you're the co-founder and the CEO of Brilliant Advice, but on a personal side, are you also all in on Tesla stock or are you diversified?
I am about as all in as I am comfortable. So it's not completely
Okay,
all in. Certainly, diversification is important, but certainly personally, I am also a big Tesla investor. Yes.
nice,
Again,
nice.
not financial advice.
Yeah, yeah. So everyone who's watching here, none of this is financial advice. We're just going to be learning what a potential model could be, and it's, I think, in my opinion, one of the best models I've seen online. And we're going to get into it right now, starting with the Robotaxi.
Sounds great.
All right, starting off with the first slide. I see you got. I'm just curious from my YouTube banner. That's cool.
I wanted to make sure we branded these Robotaxis with your channel because maybe one
Love
day
it.
you'll have a fleet of them yourself.
Oh man, if honestly, I've been thinking about it. I mean, I'm gonna wait until August 8th to see what the idea and what the plan is. Let's see. Let's see what happens. But this is cool. Thanks a lot for that. So starting off with the first slide. So
The thing to take away from this today, if you look at Tesla's business, they are in the business of making and selling EVs. How much do they make when they sell an EV? Well, that's fluctuated over time. This goes back to Q3 of 2018. And you can see that that was the high watermark in terms of their gross profit per vehicle. $15,808 in that quarter. And their low watermark happened to be just a couple of quarters later, $7,087. I guess it's 2 quarters ago it was $7,006. Those two red bars. So
yeah.
it's fluctuated between $7,000 and $15,000 per vehicle delivered, excluding regulatory credits and excluding leases.
Oh, okay. I see.
So
It
that's
did.
not a bad business. I mean, making that kind of money selling automobiles isn't so bad. But if we contrast that with how much money we think they could make on the Robotaxi, and by the way, this revenue you see on this chart is like a one-time thing, right? They sell a vehicle. This is the revenue
Yeah.
they get on a one-time basis. With Robotaxi, they have the opportunity to earn recurring revenue. And if you go to the next page, there's a few different models we can look at. The fleet operator model, where companies buy massive fleets of vehicles. Think about a car rental company or even an Uber operating, a massive Robotaxi fleet. In Europe, Mr. Green has a fleet of 4,500 Teslas. So that would be that category. You and I would be in the individual owner category with our personal car, or perhaps if we buy a few of them. And then there's the Tesla only model. And I believe that we'll see a blend of all three of these. So
Wow.
today in
Okay.
most of these charts, we'll focus just on the Tesla only model. But if you go to the next page, I just want to kind of contrast and highlight all three of them. The green bars on the left are that first chart we showed where Tesla can make between $7,000 to $15,000 on a gross profit basis. Let's say that's $5,000 to $10,000 on a net basis after taxes and so on. So that's not bad. But when it comes to Robotaxi, depending on whether it's a fleet operator or individual owner or Tesla, you can see the numbers are quite a bit higher. Now,
Yeah.
we don't know for sure what these numbers are going to be. We haven't seen the model yet, and it certainly depends on per mile pricing and things like that. But you can see that there's a significant difference in the revenue or the profit potential for Tesla to operate a Robotaxi network than it is just to sell vehicles.
Yeah. Oh, it's a big difference.
And
So
even if
this,
it's the lower one, and this is, by the way, looking at over a 5-year period. So when you buy an EV, let's say you buy one, every 5 years. For a lot of people, it's going to be a lot longer than that.
yeah.
So Tesla might make $5,000 to $10,000 over a 5-year period, but with Robotaxi, they'd probably make at least $50,000 per vehicle over a 5-year period.
Wow.
So
So this
massive.
this yellow bar is for 5 years, right?
Both bars are 5 years. The red bars are kind of the low utilization scenarios, and the yellow bars are the higher utilization scenarios.
Okay. I see.
Utilization is a really
Wow.
important concept in Robotaxi because the more the cars are being utilized, the more hours of the day they're being put in the network to generate revenue. That allows Tesla to make more money per vehicle.
Wow. That's
Right.
insane.
If your vehicle is only operating a couple hours a day, then you don't have much opportunity to make money. But if it's operating 15 hours a day, you've got a lot more opportunity to make money on it.
Yeah. Look, the Tesla only, that's crazy. Almost 300 grand. That's insane.
Potentially, depending on pricing.
Yeah.
And of course, over time, the pricing will come way down. So these numbers on here are not the numbers I expect, in 2050, for example. These numbers might be more in the near term in the first couple of 3 years of running the network. Okay.
Yeah.
So the profit opportunity per vehicle will go down over time, but that's okay because there'll be more and more vehicles put in the network over time, and so the total profits, even though the profit per vehicle comes down, the total profits can grow quite rapidly as more vehicles are added.
That's interesting. Okay, let's go on to the next chart. We have the usage scenarios.
Yeah, so this is kind of looking at utilization and understanding what that really means. So we talk about 30% utilization. That means that the vehicle is placed in service for 7.2 hours a day. Now, that doesn't mean that for all 7.2 hours that the vehicle is actually generating revenue. There could be some amount of time where the vehicle is moving from one location where it dropped off somebody to another location where it's picking up somebody. It's not earning revenue for that. That still counts as part of the 30%. So this is just how many hours a day is the vehicle in the Robotaxi network. So I've shown here between 30% utilization to 65, that's 7 to over 15 hours a day.
And that 15 hours a day would be the guy who would potentially do the thing as a full-time, like have the fleet going around as a full-time.
Yeah, that's more likely to be Tesla's own vehicles, a professionally operated fleet management company, or your vehicle if you were away on vacation for, let's say, a week. You might put your vehicle in there full-time. Now, as we'll see in a minute, even the black section of the chart where the vehicle is not in the network earning revenue, there's still an opportunity to potentially earn revenue from the vehicle. And that's through AI inference, where you can use the computer in the car to generate, to use it for an AI inference tool. Elon has talked about that. We don't know yet much about what the economics of that looks like, but collectively, all of Tesla's vehicles would be a very powerful AI inference supercomputer, essentially.
Yeah, see, this part, now he did mention this in the shareholder meeting, and I'm just like, this part, like, I don't even understand that. Like, do they become like computers to solving AI problems? Like, is that what they become? Is that what it means by like inference compute? Because personally, I don't really understand that.
Yeah, if you think about the computer in the car, so when it's driving autonomously, it's basically doing inference compute in the vehicle real time to drive itself, right? So it's a very powerful computer system in order to do that. The FSD model basically is in the car, and it's using that computer to drive. So the idea is, why can't you use all that computing power when the car is not driving and apply that inference compute to some other AI problem?
Okay.
And it would be something that's not time critical because the car may suddenly be put in use. And so it might be like a drug discovery kind of AI problem or something like that, where you just needed a lot of inference over time.
That's interesting. Okay, let's go on to the next slide.
Okay, so this is looking at per different utilization rates, number of trips per day, and potentially the number of miles driven, given a set of assumptions. Okay, so at 30% utilization, you might get 20 trips out of the vehicle in a day, right? And the vehicle might travel 160 some miles. At 65% utilization, you might get 40 to 43 trips, and the vehicle might travel 350 miles a day. Now, even at 65%, there's still time to charge the vehicle, right? So it's not like charging really is going to be an issue. The biggest issue that you have with the Robotaxi network is that there's peaks and valleys in the day in terms of demand, right? Morning rush hour, afternoon, evening rush hour. So you've got to make sure that there's certain slack built into the system to handle those peak times. And you would want to make sure that any vehicles available during those peak times have enough charge to be able to provide rides throughout the peak period, because that's where you're going to make most of the money, not at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
That's true.
So just wanted to put some numbers on, how many trips it's likely to deliver. Now, it depends again on what kind of market you're in. If you're in a big city where the trips might be really short versus maybe a smaller town where the trips could be longer, or a rural area where the trips could be really long. So these are just kind of averages for the whole network.
I see. And you're doing, each trip should be around 8 miles, right? For the first one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'll show you in a second and subsequent slides.
Okay. Next slide. There we go. Perfect.
So this one's kind of a breakdown of the revenue. So I'm looking at the fare kind of as a base fare. So if you get an Uber today or a taxi, you get charged just to step into the vehicle, right?
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
And that base fare may change depending on how far the vehicle has traveled to come pick you up, or the time of day, depending on, how much demand there is. But most of the fare is going to be based on distance traveled. If you travel a long distance, then you're in the vehicle for a long time, and therefore you should pay more. And then the other factor that I thought of is idle time. If you're in an autonomous vehicle and you fall asleep, how are they going to charge you? Because they can't really kick you out. I mean, they could try. I guess they could play loud music and try to wake you up. But if you're not sober and you pass out drunk, you're going to have to sleep it off, which ultimately is fine because you want people to be in a safe place in that case, right?
Yeah.
But you would just charge them for the time that they're still in the vehicle. So that's
That
that
makes
white
sense.
bar in terms of the idle time fare. I think that would be likely be a third component to the fare, is just how much time you're just sitting in there, even if the vehicle's not traveling.
Yeah, and that would make sense. I would reckon in the future with a robotaxi, I'm sure there'll be a option where you can like, okay, pick up my friend as well, and then maybe once you get to your friend's place, he may take or she may take, if it's a she, he may take half an hour to get ready. So that should go under idle time.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. That's
Yeah.
interesting. That's actually a cool chart.
And then the other thing is, so the blue bars on this chart are the other bars on the previous chart with the three different breakdowns. That's the trips revenue,
Yeah.
right? As we just saw, is made up of three components.
1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just the solid blue in this chart. And then what I'm saying is on top of that, there is also potential for revenue from advertising.
Okay, I see this.
Either in the vehicle or wrapped around the outside, right? I'm just curious around the outside of the car, right?
Oh, okay.
So you get advertising revenue for that wrap. Now, in that case, if you own the car, you would get to keep that revenue yourself. You wouldn't share that with Tesla, but any advertising within the car, you might share with Tesla.
Wow, that's actually really clever. I never actually thought about that. Like, because you see, if you look at buses, I mean, it's a transportation. They always have advertisements on them. So having your robotaxi or your car that has advertised around based on whatever company that wants to do it, I never even thought about that. That's crazy.
And you know what's a great vehicle for that is the Cybertruck. It's a billboard.
That's a billboard. Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Another revenue opportunity is what I'm calling curated experiences. Let's say I travel to a new city and I want a kind of a guided tour. The car can act as my tour guide. The car can speak to me and tell me the historical importance of what we're driving past. I can talk to the car and say, hey, I'm hungry. Can you take me to the best restaurant in the city that serves, Vietnamese food? And it would take me there. And maybe the restaurant would pay Tesla for that service.
Yes. So like Google, like how Google Maps does it.
Exactly.
Wow.
So there's that. Also entertainment and connectivity. If you want high-speed internet in the car, you want to play video games, some other entertainment services could be delivered via the vehicle. And then finally, the yellow bar is the distributed inference revenue that you and I talked about earlier. As the car is not in motion, if it's just sitting, it could still potentially make some money. Now, all these other revenue sources in my model, I've made them really small. I don't yet know what these will look like, but I know that they could be there. So you can see these lines are very small slivers in this chart. So my model, they're not a big deal at all, but they could be.
I mean, they add up, right? I mean, like for example, like the curated experiences, entertainment, and connectivity. Before you know it, like you're probably paying what 50 cents, 75 cents per mile driven plus the base fare. But that's not all you're going to be spending in the car. If you want entertainment, you want to watch Netflix or something. I mean, you got to pay for all that. So the customer ends up paying a whole lot more. That's just crazy. Like when you get too deep into it, the numbers just get even crazier. That's insane. That was really cool. The advertising, I did not think of that at all. The curated experiences, that was cool, and the entertainment connectivity, yeah, that's nice.
The curated experiences also too could be food in the vehicle. There could be like in a hotel, there's a mini fridge, mini bar. That could be something like that in the vehicle. You're right. You want to drink, it's right there. Yeah.
But imagine the endless ideas what companies will do once they have such a thing. Like imagine like you're a hotel, you have a robotaxi, you have a guest coming, you just send the robotaxi to the guy at the airport, verify him somehow through one of the software that it's him. Then it comes, and then while he comes, there's like the fridge and other services in the car that he can take that he has to pay for, and then there's entertainment, and then it's a whole different world. It's just crazy.
The other thing too that's not on here at all is using the vehicle as a delivery service. So it's not carrying passengers, but maybe in the downtime it's moving, goods around, whether it's groceries to somebody's house or just packages for whoever. Any business, I guess, could maybe use the fleet to move certain things around. So there's other opportunities like that too that are not modeled here.
Yeah, no, you mentioned that. I have seen Domino's do that with no driver. I don't know who it was using it, but I've seen Domino's delivering food through a vehicle with nobody in it, like driverless.
Sure.
It's crazy.
Yep. So here are the assumptions, and this is just the Tesla only version. Is I have the same slides for the other two models, but just for brevity today, just wanted to go over the Tesla only one. And so my assumption is 25 miles average speed of travel. The average trip length is 5 miles. The amount of empty miles is 40%. So that's the amount that if you drop somebody off and then have to pick somebody up, how far the vehicle is going. 40% of the total miles traveled in a day are empty, therefore not getting any revenue for those. That may be high, maybe low, depending on where you are. I'm assuming that the average loading and unloading time is about 2 minutes. And I'm assuming that in this case, because it's Tesla only, their share of the network revenue is 100%. They're not sharing it with anybody. I'm assuming the vehicle, the battery life is about 600,000 miles. Tesla does not need to pay FSD subscription to itself. And then I'm looking at utilization rates that range between 30 and 65%, as we saw in the previous charts. And my base fare is $1.50. The cost per mile is $1, and the cost per minute of idle time works out to 42 cents. And that's just a function of the average speed and how far the vehicle would go in an hour, or how much it would cost per mile if it was traveling. It works out to 42 cents.
Makes sense. That makes sense.
So Tesla's indifferent as to whether you actually go anywhere in the car or not, right? Just sitting in there, they're going to earn the same revenue as it would if it was moving. This chart shows the revenue.
Okay.
Right,
Nice.
under each of those assumptions. Per year.
I see.
So it ranges between $62,000 per vehicle per year at 30% utilization up to $128,000 per vehicle per year at 65% utilization. There's something interesting here because it looks like the higher the utilization, the better. And that is true. But you run the risk if you're utilizing the vehicles too much. When people go to call the car, they have to wait too long. So you actually want to build a decent amount of slack into the system so that when you call a car, it is there as fast as it can be. I've run the numbers, and if Tesla is running the network on their own, they actually want to have fairly low utilization if they're trying to maximize customer satisfaction. And it actually doesn't hurt them that much because more customer satisfaction would be more usage, and therefore the total revenue actually would be higher overall than if they just had fewer cars at higher utilization. It's a little bit counterintuitive. They don't necessarily want to run this thing at the highest utilization possible. You and I, as individual owners, if we put it into the network, we want a high utilization.
Yeah.
We don't want our car sitting around unless the distributed inference opportunity is huge. I don't think so. I think it'll be modest. But Tesla might have to say, you know what, even though you put your individual car in there, we're going to give you an average revenue of everybody that puts their car in this particular area. And that way they can optimize the network for the customers and not for the owners of the vehicles, right? Because there's a bit of a conflict of interest between what the owners want, high utilization, and what a rider would want. They want a vehicle now.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So
that makes
anyway, the revenue opportunity you can see here is huge.
It's massive. Yeah.
To $128,000 per vehicle.
If you're just going to make, well, this is for Tesla only, but 62,000 per each Robotaxi. That's, at this point, if this is what's going to happen, selling the vehicle, well, this is only Tesla. They're not going to be selling the vehicle. So that's, never mind. So that's insane. That's crazy. Wow.
And this is the other thing too. You may have heard people say Tesla should stop selling vehicles. Well, this is why. They should keep them for themselves, put them in their own network, and so on. I think Tesla is likely to have a hybrid model where there's a good portion of the vehicles in the network that are their own, and they do that to try to maintain a balance of utilization and customer experience versus individually owned vehicles. Or if there's a particular market where not many individuals are willing to put their vehicles in the network, Tesla can supplement that to the point that they need to in order to have a good customer experience. So that's why I think there'll be a blend of Tesla only and individual owned or fleet owned vehicles.
In the beginning, I think it'll just be Tesla by themselves to test it out, geofence in some areas, then they can exponentially grow. Once they know that FSD is good to go, they'll slowly add fleet owners with good records into the fleet, and then they'll just get better and better year after year.
Yeah, I think that's highly likely too. Although I would say the one thing counter to that is most of the vehicles today are in individual hands.
Yes.
So if they wanted to accelerate the deployment of the network at all, then using more individually owned vehicles would make sense. But we'll see. We'll see how quickly they roll this out. It may be a slow rollout.
Yeah, I'm expecting a slow rollout, and then we'll see.
Yeah, there's definitely some kinks to work out and so on, right? There's some issues that they'll need to figure out. Yep. So this page shows how it looks from a net profit and net margin perspective. The previous chart with the red was the revenue. This is factoring in the cost of running the network, and I've got a whole list of stuff that I won't bore you with here in terms of what the costs are. But we're looking at net profit of about $25,000 per vehicle, up to potentially $57,000 per vehicle, and net margins in the low 40s. So a pretty attractive business model for Robotaxi.
Okay. And I think the next slide will be this is the mile per hour. Okay.
Yeah, so let's now look at what this might look like at scale. We were looking at $1 per mile, which is the series of bars on the left. Sorry, The dollar per mile is the red bars. And then on this chart, I'm showing you what it looks like at 90 cents, 80, 70, 60, and so on down to 30 cents a mile. So of course, if you charge less per mile, then the profit opportunity comes down. But what I wanted to show here then, as you add vehicles to the network, 10 million, 20 million, 30, on up to 100 million, what the net income opportunity is at different per mile rates. So while the network maybe the first 10 million cars are priced at $1 per mile, and then maybe at 20 million, it's now 90 cents. And at 30 million, it's now 70 cents. And by the time you get to 100 million, now at 30 cents a mile. In that case, you're looking at the green bar. So you're looking at potentially, if we allow ourselves to dream, if there's 100 million vehicles in the fleet, Tesla could be making $1 trillion a year in profit. It's crazy. It's crazy to think about. Apple, which is one of the biggest market cap companies in the world, has 400 billion of revenue per year. We're talking about $1 trillion of profit per year on Robotaxi, potentially at a fleet size of 100 million.
That's crazy. You know, if you even just think about it, if you have 100 million Robotaxis on the road, I mean, what's the point of buying a vehicle at that point? You just get into a Robotaxi and go. If the cost per mile is 30 cents at that time, even if it's as high as, let's say even $1, which I don't think that's realistic, but let's just even say that. Why buy a car when you can just travel practically almost, I don't want to say free, but cheaper than a bus fare.
It disrupts so many different things.
It's ridiculous.
Right? Public transportation, vehicle ownership. And if your company motto or your company goal is to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy,
exactly.
What better way to do that? So
and this,
Tesla is highly driven to reduce the cost per mile of the Robotaxi network over time. It absolutely will destroy vehicle ownership if you get down to those kinds of per mile rates.
Yeah, there's no other way of, I mean, I can't come out with any other outcome. It's either you have the software. I mean, if you're another automaker, it's either you have the software and part of the Robotaxi era, or good luck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the only way I see this going down.
This is a way to look at those profit numbers on the previous page, and applying, I used a PE of 30 to it, and what the market value potential could be at different rates. So let's ignore the red line. That's $1 per mile. That's not going to be the case when you get to 100 million. Let's say it's the green line. Let's say it's only 30 cents per mile. Okay. That gets you to a $31 trillion market value just for Robotaxi if they get to 100 million vehicles. Okay.
That's crazy.
Let's say it's only 50 million vehicles, then that's 15 trillion of market value. Let's say it's only 10 million vehicles. That's 3 trillion of market value. 3 trillion is equal to the market cap today of Microsoft, Nvidia, or Apple, roughly. So it would put Tesla in that league just on the Robotaxi business alone, with 10 million vehicles earning 30 cents a mile. Okay.
This is kind of like, this reminds me of ARC's Robotaxi model when they just released it a week ago, saying that they didn't say how many vehicles, but they were estimating 2029 for them to reach like 900 or 600 billion in just profits of just Robotaxis, which is around here, which is just insane, which is around the same market cap here, around 6.2, or I think it was 7 to 10 trillion. So in between 20 to 30 million vehicles, if it's 30 cents per mile. So that's crazy.
Yeah. And we might get 30 cents a mile, and might go even lower than that. So I'm not suggesting that these are the numbers. I'm just showing an illustration of what the numbers would be given certain assumptions. And I'm humble enough to say I don't know. I'm just presenting the numbers in different ways so that people can look at it and say, oh, here's what I think. Oh, there it is on the chart. Okay, I get it.
Right.
I'm not trying to suggest that Tesla is worth $90 trillion if they get to 100 million vehicles at $1 a mile. I don't think that's realistic, right?
And guys, please, this is not financial advice. This is just a way of thinking how Robotaxi could work. Yeah. Just an idea. And it's just scale, right? Once you can scale this thing, that's all that you need to just exponentially grow, even at the lowest. It's when you look at the model, it's insane. It's like one of those things you look at 100 years ago and you say that, really, in 100 years time, this is what's going to happen. It's kind of like the same model a little bit.
Yeah, and I think this will happen a lot quicker than most people realize. Like a lot of things in technology with the exponential curves, it feels like maybe a slow launch, but then it happens very quickly.
Yeah.
These charts, I think we can probably skip over. I'm just looking at different cost per mile as the utilization goes up. I think we've effectively discussed that.
Yes.
if you want to go to the next page, this just shows the revenue per mile versus the cost per mile. And so if you go from $1 per mile at 30% utilization, the cost per mile might be 31 cents. And if you get out to the right side where it's 45 cents per mile at 65% utilization, your cost only goes down to 23 cents. So, you know, depending on what your assumptions are for the various costs, I think this is kind of the ballpark of what we're looking at in terms of what the cost per mile is for the service. So it would be pretty hard to offer too much below, you know, 30 cents a mile and still make money. Now, there's base fares, there's advertising revenue, there's all kinds of other revenues you could layer on top of this that potentially allow you to offer a lower cost per mile rate, because now you're making money from other things, right? Advertising, food, curated experience, inference, etc. Okay.
No, this is interesting.
And then this is just gross profit per mile as it would come down per vehicle per mile as the price declines. Anyway, I think we can skip that. The next one we can skip.
This is just both together. Okay.
Too repetitive. Yeah, this is just shows that the profit margin actually is pretty stable under these assumptions, even though the cost is coming down.
Okay.
Okay, still pretty attractive. And then this shows the net income potential in these various scenarios. Far right side, 100 million vehicles in the fleet. You're looking at potentially, you know, $2.5 trillion of net income, given this set of assumptions. And again, I'm not suggesting that that's what it will be, but I'm just sort of showing you, given the assumptions, here's how the math works out. And then this one finally is just applying the PE ratio to the different scenarios. And actually all the lines are pretty much on top of each other.
Okay, I see.
With the $1 per mile actually being the lowest market value. And as you get out to the 45 cents a mile, the market value actually slightly higher because the utilization is higher. So utilization is key in terms of maximizing the profit per vehicle. But as I mentioned earlier, utilization is something that Tesla needs to optimize for and not necessarily get the highest utilization. They need to make sure the customer experience is great. Because if you and I are going to ditch our personal cars, we need to know that when we call up a Robotaxi, it's going to be there quickly.
Oh yeah, 100% reliable on that.
Yeah, so that's going to be key if Tesla wants to displace vehicle ownership one day.
Okay. Wow, that's interesting. And then this is just the market value with the 30 PE. I mean, the numbers just get crazy.
They're nutty. They're nutty.
Yeah, they get crazy. It's just Robotaxi.
Yeah. So here's an application that I think is worth talking about. If you have a Tesla, before FSD becomes a Robotaxi service, your car is like any other car. It's just a depreciating machine. But the minute the Robotaxi is turned on, your car now, potentially, if you want it to be, is a money-making machine. And so I'm suggesting that the value of Teslas, used FSD-capable vehicles, whether or not you have FSD installed on your car or not, the value of your Tesla goes up.
Yeah.
Because it is now capable of producing a whole bunch of money. So a lot of people are not recognizing this, right? And again, it doesn't matter whether you've already paid for FSD. As long as your vehicle is FSD capable, you could see a value increase. So this will be an interesting one to watch.
Yeah. So that would mean the vehicle, but then that would mean the main selling point here would be the software, though, because that's what's going to be running the full self-driving, the autonomy and stuff.
Yeah.
So it'll be the software that would increase the value of the car.
That's right. But as long as the car is FSD software capable, then Tesla may say, hey, I know you didn't buy FSD. I know you don't subscribe to FSD. But hey, we will let you put it in our network. You're going to pay us more because you didn't buy the software, but you can still make money from your car. So effectively, your car is a money-making machine, even though you've not paid for the software. Because Tesla might want to incentivize as many people as possible to include their vehicles in the network. Okay? And then even if you and I don't want to do it, somebody could come knocking on our door and say, hey, I see you've got a Tesla parked in your driveway.
Yeah.
I will buy it for this much. And this is my attempt here at showing what the increase could be. And I apologize for the spreadsheet. There's a lot of numbers here. And maybe we just skip to the next chart.
Okay.
That shows that the value, depending on what the utilization is, at 30% utilization, if that car is only used in the network for 1 more year, it's a 30% increase in the value of your car. If you get 5 more years of life out of it, the value of the car doubles in value on a present value basis. So if you think today your car is worth $25,000, in a Robotaxi world, if it lasts for 5 years, it's actually worth $50,000 to somebody. These are the numbers that I'm talking about in terms of how much your car could increase in value when the Robotaxi network goes live. If the utilization of the vehicle is higher, then the vehicle value goes up as well. That's the blue bars. So if your used Tesla is good for 5 more years in a Robotaxi network, it could go up by double in price or go up by 150%, depending on utilization assumptions. And I'm only using 30 and 40% here, which is at the low end, right? That's like 7 to maybe 9 hours a day of service.
The days that cars become, appreciated assets is gonna be a crazy day.
Yeah.
Wow.
And actually, on the next page, actually just shows the numbers. So if the vehicle was currently valued at $32,000 here, depending on how many more years of service you can get from it, here's how much it would be worth in present value terms today. Okay, so if it lasted 8 more years, the car could be worth $76,000 to $96,000.
What a world that'll be.
Yeah. So don't make the mistake of selling your Tesla for whatever reason today if it's FSD capable. Hang on to it for a bit.
Oh yeah, especially with the new versions coming out. I mean, we're almost there. I mean, we're getting so close to it.
Yeah. Now, this is part of a whole presentation and slide deck I did in a post on X. I just want to highlight 3 Robotaxi implications, because it's not only going to change, the cost of transportation and that kind of thing. And we've talked about some of the implications. But if you go to the next page, the amount of accidents and road deaths that we have, and this is just US numbers, it's equivalent to 200 plus Boeing 737s crashing every year.
Okay.
And as a society, we seem to be okay with this.
Yeah.
Right? And what I'm saying is, if you now have a way to avoid this, then I think society starts to change and starts to say, you know what, humans should not be allowed to drive vehicles. Now, I'm not suggesting that humans are going to get banned, but I think we may start to see Robotaxi-only lanes, Robotaxi-only roads, or potentially certain only times a day when Robotaxis are allowed versus human drivers. And the human drivers get pushed gradually to the edges because they're dangerous.
Yeah.
And so this is a societal change, I think, that's coming.
Well, yeah, if you can reduce the deaths and accidents by like 10 times,
Yeah.
I think, it already is. I think 5-6 times, but if this full self-driving thing keeps improving, getting better, and getting to the point where this thing can drive 10 times, 20 times, 30 times better than a human and avoid this many deaths, I think it'll just become a norm at that time to like, no, hey, you know what? The dangerous drivers are now human.
Right. It's a bit like the shift that society had towards cigarette smoking. It's a similar kind of societal shift. It goes from being accepted to generally unaccepted, and smokers were kind of pushed to the margins and said, okay, you can't smoke on airplanes anymore, you can't smoke here, you can't smoke indoors, whatever. Same kind of thing. They just kind of get pushed off because it's behavior that society's decided that they don't want anymore.
Yeah.
So that's one example. The other implication is gas stations. We are going to see the extinction of gas stations, and in a Robotaxi world, that extinction happens rapidly.
I mean, I've noticed in Toronto, some gas stations, they have added both gas stations and, the fuel and chargers. Like they had both, which was interesting to me. When I was, I think it was last year, 2 years ago, when I was there, I saw both there. I'm like, you can charge here and fuel up here if you want. It was a pretty interesting concept. Maybe in the future, gas stations will turn into EV stations.
Maybe. Now, in some countries like Norway, for example, I think that's been a pretty successful transition.
Okay.
But Norwegian gas stations have some really good food options, and their bathrooms are clean. In the United States, a lot of gas stations are not known for their food or clean bathrooms. The business model of the gas stations have to change. They have to adapt. They have to provide, since EV owners are going to be there for more than 5 minutes, they have to provide a nice environment for them to want to go there. That's right. It's not just providing a charger, it's providing the other services that people want. So it's an opportunity and a threat to gas stations. Also, location matters, because if I'm charging my car at home, I'm not going to be charging at the gas station down the street. Whereas before, that gas station was very convenient for me, now it's not needed, right?
Okay.
But a gas station on a route heavily traveled for long distance, having a charger, EV charger, that might make more sense, because I will need that, right? But the one around the corner from my house, I don't need to go there anymore, because I'm charging at home.
Charging at home, yeah.
So,
and I would reckon apartment buildings will also add in superchargers if EVs are going to be, when they are going to be the thing. I would reckon that some parking lots will have charging stations, so they don't have to.
But since we're talking about Robotaxi, apartment goers aren't maybe not going to have their own EVs anymore, right? They're just going to use it as a service. So
true.
we've got like a transition and then another transition on top of that right away, right? And if you go to the next slide, actually, speaking of parking, this is a great video about how the parking laws in the United States came about from Climate Town. But we won't need as much parking anymore, because if Robotaxis are just picking people up and dropping them off, they're constantly moving. They're not just sitting idle anymore. We don't need as much parking. And the U.S. has paved over the state of Connecticut basically in parking. Right.
Yeah. And as we spoke earlier, if you have a lot of robotaxis on the road, it eliminates the ownership of having a car. Then you're going to have a lot of parking lots that are just useless. They can be used as buildings or other things that can be useful.
That's right.
Wow. Okay, that was cool.
So there are a lot of other implications that I've discussed in various posts on X. If you're interested, I mean, here's kind of a summary of some of them. There are a lot of implications, and I'm sure I've missed a bunch as well. But this is profound in terms of moving to an autonomous transportation world.
The disruptions are crazy.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say. The disruptions is crazy.
Yeah. Now, as excited as I am about Robotaxi, and I am very excited about Robotaxi, it doesn't hold a candle to the next topic of discussion,
which is the bot. Oh man, everyone! If you guys want to follow Cern, I'm a follower of Cern on X. His link is in the description. Give him a follow. His research is profound. One of the best, as you guys just saw. Very detailed, and he even said it's not that detailed, which is just crazy to me. So, anyways, let's go see how the bot is going to be. Let's see. It's gonna hurt my brain. Okay, but it's not gonna hurt my brain as much as the bot, which I absolutely just don't add in my valuation. I just don't do it. It just hurts my brain. So I'm just curious, like as that says there. So, Cern, take it away. What do you have for us with the bot?
That sounds good. So on this slide, if I run a factory, let's say I run a big factory in Texas that has the letters TSLA on the roof. I don't know what this factory makes, but it makes stuff. Okay. I have the following choices of labor. I can employ animals. I can employ humans, number 2, or I can employ robots, industrial robots. Now, if this factory makes cars, then number 1 isn't going to be useful for me. Okay. Number 2, okay. Humans are pretty good. I'll use humans. But number 3 is really good, particularly heavy stuff, repetitive stuff. I'll employ industrial robots. Humans can't pick up a car and move it, but an industrial bot can. But I still have to use a lot of humans. And humans have their flaws, right? We quit. We show up late. We get sick. We have all these needs. There's a whole list of things that are the challenge with humans. We might even want to unionize. And that's what this picture is showing, right? Is the UAW, right? And so humans kind of caused some trouble for somebody who's trying to manufacture a bunch of stuff, and rightly or wrongly. I'm not saying that all manufacturing companies, treat their workers well or anything like that, but humans do present some challenges. So what happens now, and if you go to the next slide, what happens now if we have a 4th choice? What happens if we invent a new form of intelligent labor that you can ask it to do something? Go pick up that from the corner and take it across the factory and deliver it over there. It's like having a human that you can instruct in English or whatever language you want and tell them to do something. And the cool thing about bots is they will do it over and over and over again. They don't need to take breaks. They don't need to eat. They don't even need to sleep, right? You just need to charge them every now and then. And we'll go into the list of advantages in a minute. But having the ability to have intelligent robotic labor that you don't have to program, like number 3, you've got to program these bots. You've got to tell them exactly what to do, when to do it, and they're actually kind of dangerous to be around. People have been killed working next to these things, and you can see they're in cages, like they keep people out. With the humanoid bots, you, in theory, will eventually be able to work in close proximity to them. This is why I'm so excited about humanoid bots, because we're creating a new form of labor that we have never had before in all of humanity. Now, it's also scary because it can replace us, right? So we'll come back to that, but just from a business owner's perspective, I've got this factory. I now have a new form of labor, and I'm excited about that. So the AI-powered humanoid bots are coming. Don't make any mistake about it. Don't listen to me and say, no, this guy's wrong. It's not going to happen. It's happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see it happening.
You may disagree with everything else I say, but trust me, this is coming. And we already have bots today that are doing useful work autonomously not at scale, mind you. They still a long ways to go, but these bots exist and they're doing work and they're improving rapidly.
I think Amazon has about 70,000 robots working in their factories. Last time they
750,000 robots moving stuff around on predetermined routes. So they're not AI powered, intelligent bots yet.
Yeah, they're just normal bots, but that's
Yeah, but
750,000.
yeah.
I mean, that's insane.
Amazon will soon have more robots than people working in their distribution centers.
That's
So
crazy.
this page visually shows you some of the bot players. If you go to the next page, we're tracking right now 28 companies that we have listed on this page. At various stages of development, we're trying to show kind of where they are in their development. Are they able to walk? Do they have hands? Are they demoing useful work? Have they integrated a large language model and voice? Has that been integrated into the bot? Can they do autonomous work? Have they announced pilots? And then the last column, deploying bots. And you can see right now that's blank. But these companies are progressing rapidly. I'm adding more to the list all the time. There's another 3 or 4 companies that we're looking at that will probably soon be added.
Wow.
And then these ones on this list are getting more and more of these boxes filled in over time. The red section are the Chinese companies.
I was about to ask that. Yeah.
Okay. The blue section at the top is US, Canada. The darker blue is Europe.
Okay.
Boston Dynamics is a different color. It's in the US, but it's owned by Hyundai. Nenti Robotics is an Israeli company, gets its own color. And at the bottom, Toyota Research. There will be more companies. There'll be French companies. There'll be Spanish, Italian, Korean, Japanese, etc. So this list will get bigger. I have said that this is an imperative for every single country in the world to figure out their bot strategy. The reason is this, is that today an economy is made up of labor and the productivity of the labor. The labor forces of a country are driven by demographics for the most part. Some of it's immigration, but demographics. But if you're to have a baby today, it takes 20 years for that baby to become a productive member of society.
Yeah.
Unless you're, into child labor. But 20 years by and large.
Okay.
And the productivity of that person is driven by their education, the tools and the machinery and the equipment and the computers that you have available to them. But a humanoid bot, you bump up your labor force instantly, and also the productivity of that labor force gets correspondingly bumped up. So GDP, as we measure it, which is labor times productivity, has the ability to do a step change with bots. And if countries are at economic, war with each other, they all need to make sure that they have access to this new technology. They should all be trying to foster the development. They should all be trying to get bot manufacturing in their country. Because if they don't, they could find themselves left behind very quickly. It's also the case for a company, Walmart versus Amazon. If Amazon gets bots and Walmart doesn't, Walmart's going to find themselves at a massive disadvantage, right? Because Amazon either can, by reducing their costs, can make more profits, or reduce their prices to their customers and be even more competitive and put Walmart out of business over time, right? And maybe a combination of both. Amazon enjoys more profits and they become more competitive. That hurts their competition. So this is something that whether CEOs of companies recognize it today or not, they're in a race for their survival, right? And I know maybe I sound crazy saying this now, but this will happen very quickly.
I think it was Jensen, CEO of NVIDIA. He's like 2-3 years, we'll have big breakthroughs in robotics and bots. And Elon has completely shifted. Like he doesn't even talk about cars anymore, about Tesla. He talks about robotaxis and more about the bot now. And it blows my mind. That's why I got you here trying to explain this to me.
Yeah. So let's go to the next page and maybe hit on some of the questions. Which questions of these are top of mind for you?
Why do we need humanoid robots? Well, we can see why. What are the advantages of bots? I think almost everything. In the long term, there's a lot of advantages. What is useful work? What is the market opportunity for bots? How many bots can be made? I was talking about like 100. A crazy number. How much will it take to cost to make a bot? It looks like it's going to be in the low 10,000s, as Elon mentioned. How much will it cost to use a bot? That's a good question. How much will it cost a bot? Cost to use a bot? What might the business model look like? What might the bot industry be worth? There's a lot of good questions here. I would say number 4, number 7, and 9. Yeah, so 4, 7, 8, and 9 seems to be very interesting questions.
Okay. Let's hit on all of them, but we'll make sure that we cover 4, 6, 8, and 9 more detailed. So if you go to the next page. So as it stands today, there's actually a shortage of labor in the world. So we don't actually need to worry about people losing their jobs to bots just yet.
Okay.
Okay. So initially with bot deployments, it'll be to cover areas where, there isn't There aren't humans who want to do the dirty, dangerous, repetitive jobs. Okay. And that's great. People are going to be really happy about that. Oh, the boss is no longer asking me to go clean up the furnace. We'll send the bot in to do it. Whatever it is. That's one thing. And the second slide here too is, a lot of people lose their lives at work. And so anything that can be done to mitigate this, it's kind of like the Robotaxi opportunity of people not dying on the roadways. This is similar. We can use bots to reduce this. This is great. It's a massive savings to society. Another thing for companies, worker turnover is very costly, right? So Walmart, for example, to use them again, their turnover is about 44% per year.
Wow.
It costs them, $4 billion on employee training and development, for example. Like, these companies are spending a ton of money just to keep their workforces in place. So having a certain number of bots may help alleviate the turnover, because maybe people feel like they're doing more meaningful work, or it may just mean that they don't have as much turnover to deal with, and so they've got a constant workforce they can rely on in bots, and the turnover is not as difficult for them.
I mean, FedEx turnover rate 102%. That must be a living nightmare for HR.
Yeah. And of course, FedEx, as you can imagine, has a peak time of year at the end of the year around the holidays.
Yeah.
That's really challenging for them to stop up as well. And then finally, on this topic, employee theft and fraud cost companies a lot of money as well. The average dishonest retail employee, for example, costs the company $1,500 a year. But anyway, there's all kinds of challenges that you can imagine from employees trying to, steal or do something bad.
Human behavior things.
Yeah, and this issue of time theft, $400 billion costly in time theft. People not working the hours they said they were.
That's true. That's so true.
So here's a short list of all the advantages of humanoid robots versus people. We've discussed some of them. There's a whole bunch more on this list, and there's a whole bunch more that are not on the list. But if you can have a workforce that is humanoid bots, you solve a lot of problems and reduce a lot of costs. We just discussed some of the benefits, but there's a lot more. You don't need to drug test bots. You don't need parking spaces for them. You don't need to do management reviews. They don't fight with other employees. They don't go on strike. They don't steal from you, right? They don't just disappear, not show up for work. Like, all these advantages that we can see.
Okay. And then some, of course. Yeah.
And then some. Perhaps we don't need to spend so much time on here, but there's this concept of useful work. And a lot of people say, well, we're not going to see bots in the workplace because they just can't do X, Y, and Z. And the answer is no, we're going to see them sooner rather than later, because useful work is, it's pretty easy to get a bot to do useful work. And so Scott Walter has talked about that here, and I'll just leave this here if people can read this if they want. But bots are already showing that they can do useful work. Even moving something from A to B is useful work in a manufacturing environment or in a warehouse. Yeah,
I think Tesla they said they have a few of them already working now. In the Fremont factory. Two of them.
Yep.
2 working now, and then Elon said end of next year, about 1,000, which is just...
And then rapidly scale up from there.
That's just
so how big is this opportunity? Let's look at it this way. The oil industry consumes about 100 million barrels a day. Not the oil industry. The world consumes 100 million barrels per day. And if those barrels are priced at $75 a barrel, the value of all the oil consumed in a day in the world is 7.5 billion, and the oil industry has revenue of about 19 billion. So the oil industry is not just selling crude oil, there's chemicals and other refined products. So the oil industry is a $19 billion revenue business per day. Now, the global labor market is even bigger. If there are 3.5 billion workers in the world and the average wage per day is $30, the value of all the labor in the world per day is $105 billion. It's 5.5 times bigger than the oil industry. And so this is why bots are so exciting, because labor is one of the biggest markets in the world, right? 3.5 billion people working, right?
Yeah.
Earning some money. And there's different wage rates around the world. Some are less than this, some are far more than this. But it's such a massive opportunity. The physical labor market is huge. Now, I would also say that it's not just limited to Earth in the long run. Robotaxi, we're probably not going to be driving many vehicles on the moon or Mars, but we could deploy bots there. So ultimately, there's no cap on the number of bots that could be deployed long term. Let's forget about that. But I just wanted to mention that the off-Earth uses will be present one day as well with bots.
Yeah, okay. I think I think Elon's plan is when he goes to Mars or something like that, take the bots there first, and then kind of like have a fleet of bots, program it from here, like just something in that world. First things first, bots go there. They have a set of tasks to do, and then later we can send humans there, whatever. But that needs to be done. Bots Big ideas, it's just crazy,
Bots don't need life support. They don't need food. They don't need a whole bunch of stuff that humans need.
They just need energy.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, if on this slide, if we say, for example, that okay, the Chinese are going to not allow our bots in their market, or there's other markets that are too small, like India, they can't afford bots, which is silly to say. But just to say, we're only looking at an opportunity in the Western world, which I'm defining here as U.S., Europe, Japan, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Okay.
Developed countries, pretty much.
Yeah, and there's more on this list, but this is just a quick way to look at it. The labor share versus oil is about over 9 times as big. So it's even bigger as relative to the amount of oil consumed. This is a big market. Okay, how many bots will be made each year? So there's a number of different ways of looking at this. One is we can look at how many autos are made every year. And the largest auto companies make, say 10 to 11 million vehicles a year. And the auto industry collectively makes about 70 to 80 million a year. Okay? If we adjust for the weight difference in an automobile versus a bot, okay, if we assume that weight is the key thing, right? Cars are heavy, bots only weigh about 3% of the weight of a car. So 70 to 80 million cars, it was about 2.5 billion bots a year. If all these automakers switched from making cars to bots, in theory, based on weight, they would be able to make 2.5 billion bots a year. Now, clearly, there's other factors. It's not just weight, but this, I think, is still instructive. The cell phone industry, on the bottom half of the page, Apple sells about 200 million iPhones each year. Samsung sells about 225 million. The industry sells about 1.3 billion devices per year. Massive industry. Now, adjusting for weight there, the industry makes about 13 million bot equivalent. So clearly weight isn't the issue. It's more about demand, right? There's a certain demand for phones, so the industry makes 1.3 billion of them. There's a certain demand for vehicles, and so the industry is scaled up to that demand level and makes 70 to 80 million of them. So it's not about weight, it's about demand. How big does the industry need to be? And so this is where we try to answer the question of, well, how many bots do we need? Right. And I don't think we know yet, but Elon has said that we might need 2 to 3 to 4 times as many bots as humans. Now, he hasn't articulated the reasons for that, but he said that now a few times.
One part that I'm not understanding on this chart is the weight difference. That's about for example, for the auto part, adjusting for the weight difference, that's about 2.5 billion bots equivalents.
Yeah.
How did you how did you get 2.5 billion bots?
This 70 to 80 million divided by 0.03, so 3%.
3%.
Right? If a bot is only 3% of the weight of a car.
Okay.
Right. And so therefore you should be able to make then, adjusting for that weight, it adjusts to 2.5 billion bots. Maybe the next page will make it a little clearer for you. So
let's see.
The total weight of a bot, let's say of Optimus, is about 120 pounds, 54 kilos. The weight of a Model 3 is 4,000 pounds.
I see where you're coming from now.
So
okay.
When you build a car, you've got to move all that mass through your factory. It's a big deal to move cars through a factory, right?
Yeah.
And you've got to have giga presses making the parts, and stamping presses stamping out doors and stuff. With a bot, you don't have to do that. The mass isn't nearly as big. So in theory, you should be able to make a lot more of them, right? If you were to build a bot gigafactory, you should be able to pump out a lot more bots than you do cars.
I get it now.
The cost of a Model 3, let's say, is $30,000, and we think the cost of a bot might be, $8,000 to $10,000. So it's 3% of the weight and about 30% of the cost. And here are the different components that go into the bots. And so the biggest part you can see is the actuators, the motors that make everything move. And so, that's costly. But as the industry scales, the cost of those things will come way down. These are Scott Walter's numbers. There's others that have made projections in a similar range. Let's try to answer the question about how much will bots cost? Not to make, but to use. Again, I'm the guy in Texas with the big factory. I have people working for me, and depending on their skill level, I pay them a certain amount per hour. Let's just say there's no minimum wage. So I've got somebody who's really young and isn't that skilled. I pay them $5 an hour. But because of benefits and the payroll taxes I have to pay, it effectively costs me $7.28 an hour in the US. At $10 an hour, it effectively costs me close to 15. At 20, it's close to 29. At 40, it's close to 60. Okay? The red showing the benefits and the extra costs above the wage rate. You go to the next page. Let's compare that with the cost of a humanoid bot. I'll show you how I get these numbers in a minute, or we can talk about it in more detail. But let's just say, for example, the cost of the humanoid bot for somebody who does a job that gets paid $5 an hour, right? So I'm using the wage rate as a proxy for how skilled the bot is, or how skilled the employee is, right? I paid more skilled employees more money per hour. So let's start on the left side of this chart. If you're doing tasks that are only worth $5 an hour, it's going to cost me $7.28 effectively for a human, and a bot, it'll cost $3.80, depending on the assumptions I used here. So what I'm showing is, as the bots gain skills and can do the work that human workers get paid 10, 15, 20, and $40 an hour for, the factory owner should be willing to pay more for the bot per hour as well. And they would still save money. You can see that at $40 an hour work, the bot would cost them $16.60 an hour, whereas the human employee would have cost them almost $58 an hour, right? I would be happy to pay for a bot $16.60 if it could do the work of somebody that I pay $58 an hour for. So what's interesting is this page. My savings, my realized hourly savings by using a bot is very similar to the wage rate of the human, okay? So let's just go to the middle of the chart, $15 an hour. That's my wage rate for humans. My realized savings, the cost between a human and my bot cost is $14 an hour. I would be crazy not to use the bot because I'm saving so much money. Okay, now this assumes that the bot is capable of doing the same work that a human can do. And maybe today that's a stretch. But you know what? The bots never sleep, right? They can work 7,000 hours a year. A human cannot work anywhere near 7,000 hours a year. We work close to 2,000 hours a year. So the bot has a 3.5 to 1 advantage over a human. So even if the bot's a little slower, we can make it up because while we sleep or we're taking a break or whatever, the bots can still work. How did I arrive at these numbers? If you go to the next page, what I assumed in calculating these numbers is, let's say I'm putting my Tesla hat on now and say, okay, we built the bot. How much do we charge people for this? Let's focus on the $15 an hour. If I have a human doing that work, I'm going to pay $15 an hour plus the extra benefits, right? I can calculate how much it would cost me over, let's say, I think I used a 5 or 10 year time. It does not show on this chart, but let's say it's over 5 years. I can calculate how much it's going to cost to pay the human for 5 years doing this work.
Savings is massive.
Right? And I say, okay, let's price the bot so that we share 50-50 in the savings with the company that we're selling the bot to. The present value of the savings is $615,000 a year. Tesla's going to keep half of that, and therefore the bot price is $307,000. If I'm the company buying the bot for $307,000, that's how much I'm going to save over the next 5 years. Does that concept make sense in terms of how I arrived at pricing the bots? It's based on the savings to the customer, and Tesla saying, we'll split that savings to you 50-50, and therefore here's the price.
Okay, so then, so how you did it was like Tesla doesn't have a price for it. It'll just be individually priced differently for every company that they decide to sell at a mass rate to them.
Well, maybe, but I'm just saying conceptually in terms of how do I arrive at what the bot's price would be? I'm calculating how much the bot could save, right? Because the bot, you don't have those extra costs. You just like, I have certain assumptions for how much the bots cost to make and then maintain versus the cost of humans to pay per hour plus the benefits. And I can calculate the savings. And that's that, at $15 an hour, it's about 14 something an hour in savings by using bots, right? And then I say, okay, I take those savings and the bot lasts, let's say, for 5 years. I calculate that out, and the company could save $615,000 if they didn't have to pay anything for the bot. Therefore, Tesla, I'm going to keep half of that, and the company will give you half of those savings.
Okay. I got it.
Now, we've heard from one of the bot makers now that they are pricing the bot at the same level as human wages. So it's even higher than this. But I'm trying to be conservative here in my assumptions, and I'm still getting crazy numbers. I don't think that Tesla will sell bots, although I had a little convo with Elon recently, and he confirmed this past weekend that they will both sell them and offer them for rent. But on the next page, what I'm trying to do is figure out, based on those previous prices, here's what the monthly rental cost would be for a bot. Okay, these are the implied subscription prices. So at $15 an hour work, the bot would cost me about $26.50 a month. Now, if you put your consumer hat on, you may say, I'm not going to pay $2,600 a month for a bot. I can't afford that. No, you're not. But if I'm running a company with a manufacturing line, absolutely I would pay this because I'm going to save $307,000 over the lifetime of the bot or over a 5-year period, for example. Consumers are competing against businesses for these things. And the bots are far more valuable to a business than they are to a consumer, right? Unless money's no object for you, you're going to pass. So this is not a consumer product from day one. This is a product designed for businesses to help them with their labor costs. Now, eventually, this will be a consumer product, right? And as Elon talks, we'll have one in our homes or 2 or 3 or whatever. But initially, and for a long time, I think these bots will go into companies, manufacturing lines, warehouses, factories. That's where they're most needed.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, I definitely see that.
We've discussed this earlier, but I view bots as a call option on the survival of a business. If you don't have access to this new low-cost labor force, your business will be at a competitive disadvantage. And if you don't deploy these bots, you will fail because your competition will, right? What happens if UPS deploys bots and FedEx doesn't? What
Oh
happens
yeah,
if
yeah.
Amazon deploys them and Walmart doesn't? And what I've suggested is these bots will be in such short supply that the CEO of Walmart should be calling Elon Musk and saying, I want to be your first customer because I understand the value of being first versus my competition. Because if I have to wait 5 years to get these things, it's too late.
Well, yeah, cost. For example, like an item of yours that you like, or you want to just price competition is going to be
Yeah.
drastically lower.
So I did a quick example of that actually for Walmart targeting Kroger on the next page. Now, this is maybe a bit extreme, but just to illustrate the point, Walmart, let's just talk about Walmart. 2.3 million employees, average wage rate, let's say, is $15 an hour. Their effective wage is close to 22. It costs them $100 billion a year in labor costs. Let's say they can replace a third of those. 35% of them in their warehouses, distribution centers, restocking shelves, whatever. Walmart has, remember, they have 44% turnover, so they have to replace a lot of workers every year. Okay, so there's 805,000 workers that are just going to turn over. You don't need to replace them one for a bot because the bot, again, can work 7,000 hours and the worker only 2,000. So you only need one bot for every 3.5 people. So instead of buying 805,000 bots, you only need 230,000 of them, okay? Your annual labor savings would be $23 billion. Walmart's, the last time I did this, a few months ago, their trailing 12 months of pre-tax income was $23 billion. They could double their profits by buying 230,000 bots. The caveat to this is they can't do this today. The bots are not capable yet, but I'm just showing that eventually, when the bot capability is there, these companies will have every financial incentive to deploy them to their maximum extent because of this reason. The economics are so compelling for them.
Yeah, it would be stupid not to do it.
It would be stupid not to do it. And the same math works out to Target, to Kroger. I've run the numbers for UPS and FedEx and Amazon. It's the same opportunity for all of them.
Wow. So something that just crossed my mind is that if this, well, I think this is looking to be inevitable. It's going to happen. It's a matter of when. Will we see a few years or 3-4 years of just people getting laid off because they're just getting replaced with a bot? Because that's going to be crazy. Like all of a sudden, Walmart takes delivery of this many thousand bots. Amazon takes delivery of this many thousand bots. And next thing you know, it's like, hey, I'm getting these bots to replace this person or that person because they can do their job better than him, better than them. So will we see a crisis of just employees getting fired by companies because they no longer need them?
Well, initially we have a shortage of workers, so no.
Okay.
The turnover of these companies is already high enough that you don't have to fire anybody. They're leaving anyway. You just replace them with a bot and don't hire a human. But to your point, eventually, if these bots truly become as capable as we think they will be, right? Intelligent, autonomous devices that can do all the work that a human can do that's physical, then yes, why would you hire a human when you can use a bot for, much less? And my bot pricing here in my models actually initially is very high, but I believe over time it'll become very, very cheap to deploy bots, $1 or $2 per hour effectively.
God.
Right. And then at that point, it makes sense for you and I to have one in our homes.
Oh, yeah. At that point, yeah.
Right. Why not?
I'm not too sure. I don't think but I'm here in Kuwait. And every family who is the local, I'm not a local here, but locals who are Kuwaitis, they have like 1 or 2 or 3 maids that cooks for them, that cleans their laundry, cleans the everything. It's like it's a maid. They do everything for them, take care of the kids. And it is cheap. It's like if I could just make a quick assumption, not assumption, but quick conversions from Kuwaiti dinars to US dollars, about maybe every month we pay these maids maybe $400 a month. Mm-hmm. But to them, it's a lot of money because they just convert it right back to the Philippines or India, right? Yeah. So if it could be cheaper than that, I mean... Oh my God, that's gonna be crazy.
And I think that's a really good example because in, let's say, the Western world, you don't need it to be cheaper than that. That would be an amazing price.
Yeah, and like in the West, it's like, hey, like it's not a thing. It's not a culture thing that to have maids coming, or if you want to have a maid, you're gonna pay a lot of money for that.
Right.
So if you can have a bot to do that, then hey man, I would pay for it because the convenience here. Because my parents have a maid here as well. The convenience here, it's like, oh man, I don't have to like clean my room. I don't have to like do my bed, cook, anything. It's just I know it's gonna get done by the end of the day. Coming out from that, I'll be traveling 2 weeks into Toronto. I have to do all that myself because I don't have. Yeah, so it's like, oh
Yep.
darn it.
Yeah, and I think so. You know firsthand what life is like without that, what you're missing. A
Yeah,
lot of people, let's say in the United States, don't have that. They don't know what they're missing, and they can't really imagine what life would be like if they had the help.
oh yeah,
But very quickly, people would figure it out, and they would say, "Okay, oh, it's only going to cost me this much a month to get all these things done. I'm crazy
worth
not to.
it.
It frees up my time. I can go do something else, right?"
It's such a good time saver. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Let's take the next step then and look at kind of what the potential is. I've got Chris Camillo on here. He's also on X posting various things about bots. He did a model on bots some time ago, and I compared his with mine. So that's what this chart is showing. And
Nice.
he's talking about Tesla deploying 1.5 million bots by 2030. And he's got a bot price an hour of $16.80 an hour. And he has his reasons for those numbers. And in my model, I had $8.50 an hour. Okay, so a little bit lower. He had bot revenue per year of 95,000, and mine is 60,000. Again, these are bots going into restaurants, factories, businesses of all sorts. He's got different costs of his bot, but the long and short of it is that he's got profit per bot of 84,000, and my profit per bot is about 47,000. Recall from our Robotaxi model that the 5-year Robotaxi profit was about 50,000. This is 47,000 per year. So remember when I said I'm excited about Robotaxi, but even more excited about bots? This is the reason. Bots can make, on a per unit basis, more money than a vehicle can, and the market opportunity for bots is much bigger than the market opportunity for vehicles. We might get 100 million Robotaxis. We can get over 1 billion bots. So it's kind of like 50x the opportunity, something like that, depending on, this, again, this is long term. This is not 2030. We're just talking 2030 here, 1.5 million bots. Okay, so let's just stick with this number instead of getting carried away. He gets to a Tesla Optimus valuation of 10 trillion just on the back of 1.5 million bots deployed, and my valuation was like 7 trillion.
Yeah.
And I joke, what's 3 trillion among friends? It's nothing.
It's crazy you're giving it 100 PE because I mean that's going to be crazy. Like the company's going to be worth, like, let's say for example 7 trillion, but then it has a PE of 100, which is, it just tells you the growth of it.
Yeah, and I'm using such a high PE because if they're deploying 1.5 million bots, then it's telling you that 15 million's coming, and eventually 150 million's coming, and maybe 1.5 billion's coming. So the PE multiple should be very high in those early years. Now, in the later years, I think 850 an hour is too high. It's going to come down. Absolutely. Right? Because people say, oh, what about competition? You're not factoring in competition. No, I think this will be a very competitive market. But still, how much are these bots going to make? Even at $1 or $2 or $3 an hour, extremely attractive long-term opportunity. If we look at the next page, and again, if you recall from the Robotaxi example, we were looking at net margins of low 40s. We're looking at
high 60
to 70%.
Well, yeah, this becomes. I mean, it'll be the same as a software as a service, right? I'm sure there'll be some programs that Tesla will have. I don't even know at this point that you could just purchase through the bot, pay monthly. Like if you wanted to run, you gotta pay for that. If you wanted to cook your food, you gotta pay for that. Like I don't know, it's just endless when you think about it. What could this subscription could be, and all that kind of stuff. It's just my brain.
And we're not even layering on other revenue opportunities here, right? Like we did with Robotaxi. Conceivably, there are lots of other revenue opportunities associated with Optimus. So, for example, if I have Optimus and I can talk to my robot and it can talk to me, I can have a conversation with it, then the robot becomes a computing platform, right? I don't necessarily need an iPhone anymore, although you're not going to necessarily be always next to your bot, but this in your home, the bot can replace what you use a computer and an iPhone for, and it becomes your agent. You can say, hey, I'm hungry, please order me my favorite Italian food, and it knows what I like, it knows what what I've ordered before, it just does it. So again, there's revenue opportunities associated with some of those services that you could ask the bot to do for you, potentially. I don't know. I haven't included it in my models, but I'm just saying that there could be some other things associated with it. There's also, by the way, distributed inference on the bot. When the bot is just sitting around doing nothing, you can use the computer in the bot for distributed inference too. Now it's half the size that's in the Tesla car, right? So maybe the revenue per bot is about half of what you get from a car, but still, that could be something. Let's dream a little bit. When there's 150 million bots in service, which again is not that huge, that's the green numbers in the middle of the page. I'm looking at industry potential here at $5 an hour or $3 an hour on the right side. I get an industry valuation of 240 trillion to 450 trillion.
So here's the part that boggles my mind. Industry valuation trillion. Like, is there enough money supply to even justify these numbers?
Yeah. So again, let's go back to our GDP equation. First of all, the first pushback I get, well, our economy is not that big. The global economy is 100 trillion. And you're saying there's a market value of 200 trillion. How is this even possible? Where's the money? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
GDP is simply a calculation of labor times productivity. So if we massively increase labor at, let's say, the same productivity as a human, GDP goes up too. So there's no constraint on GDP. It's just a calculation of labor times the productivity of the labor. If these bots are productive, producing things, then GDP goes up by a step change. Money is something that we just create.
That's
so
true.
we will create enough money to support whatever economic activity there is in the world, right? So it's not about the constraint being, oh, GDP can't grow that fast, or we don't have enough money. The constraint is the technology, not those other things. The constraint also, to bring up an earlier point you made, is society's acceptance and adaptation to using bots as a form of labor. There may be a lot of resistance. People may say, how is this going to work? I've lost my job, or I quit my job and now I can't find a job because they're using bots instead of humans. I can't live anymore. And so there's going to be some societal adjustments that we don't have the answers for yet. But on paper, we're going to have an abundance like we never had before because these bots do the work for us at such low cost. And Elon talked about this again today, that we're going to have,
I read that.
Universal high income, not universal basic income, but universal high income.
The high income.
And maybe
it's the only way.
Part 4, maybe he, expands on his thinking on this a bit more, right? But from a mathematical standpoint, I can see that the bots are going to be able to produce whatever we need them to produce at a very low cost because we've reduced the cost of labor. Now, ideally, you and I get to own a fleet of bots and we make income that way, right? And maybe that's the opportunity for humans, is that we'll all get some bots that create value and income for us. I don't know. These are unanswered questions at this point.
Yeah, this is the unknown.
But assuming we can navigate the political aspect of all this, that bots do have the potential of creating an abundance that we can scarcely dream of today.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's just crazy.
It's nutty, and for me to even say these words is nutty. And when Elon tweeted out that he thought we could have 2 to 3 to 4 times human population in bots, and I ran those numbers, and I made the mistake of making a post on X, you get to an industry value in the quadrillions, you run the risk of losing any credibility. But I'm just running the numbers. It's just a spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's just what could act. I mean, this is just a model. Like Elon said, if they're looking, and it's just not Elon saying it. It's other guys in the AI space saying it, that, hey, look, if this bot actually happens and all the labor costs go low, you're looking at this at mass scale, because okay, maybe the consumer doesn't want one, but companies want one because they're going to save a whole bunch, and eventually it's going to make its way to your house, and then you want one, and then everybody wants one because it's just convenient. And the next thing you know, before you know it, everything is all bots now, and because it makes life so much better. It makes life more productive for you.
Anything that we can do to make humanity more productive is a good thing.
Yes,
it's just navigating the societal changes around that.
Yep, and this bot thing is exactly doing that. That's crazy. 450 trillion.
And I don't know what Tesla's market share would be of this. You assign whatever percentage you want. Let's say they have a 10% market share, then you're looking at a $24 trillion company at 150 million bots deployed. And again, I think that is still kind of getting started, right? 150 million is not the cap here. And now if you go to the next page, here's kind of some
There
it's
we
not
go.
a projection for global bot deployments, but you can see in 2024, maybe there's 10 deployed in the world. Okay, maybe 2 by Tesla and 8 somewhere else, whatever the number is. Okay, and then it's 100 the next year. Okay, and then by 2026, you get to 10,000 deployed in the world. Small number. Okay, and then 100,000. Again, not crazy. 2028, 600,000. We're starting to get some production ramped up. 1.5 million, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million by 2031. Okay, and then we've got production facilities ramping up, and in the mid 2030s, you've got production going through the roof because we've figured this out. I think the 1.5 billion may have come from Elon. He's saying in terms of the industry might be able to produce 1.5 billion bots a year. Okay.
Yeah, it was between like 1 or 1.5, something like that.
Yeah. So this is kind of a potential pathway to get there. And again, I'm not projecting big numbers early on, but Elon has said that they'll scale this thing aggressively as they can, right?
But the question is, are they going to, I'm just so curious. I don't know if I would want to know your thoughts, if you would have any idea. where would they build these bots? Like, will it be in the current factories? Will they have to make a new factory to make that? Like that's also another question of mine. It's just like, will you have a different assembly line to make these bots? Would you have a whole new factory plant to make these bots? I mean, they're already making it apparently in Texas. So
yeah, my perspective is that you don't need gigafactories to make bots. You could make them in a factory in a smaller footprint and still get a pretty good economy of scale. Factories making, say, 1 million of these things a year, but you might want quite a few factories of these around the world. And again, I think a lot of countries are going to want a bot factory in their country, right? If I'm Canada, I want a bot factory in Canada. If I'm France, I want a bot factory in France. If I'm Indonesia, I want a bot. So there could be bot factories all around the world. And I think that would make sense once they get this thing figured out. That's probably in the early 2030s that starts to happen.
It's going to be a crazy time to witness that bot factory.
Anyway, this is another illustration of, potential number of bots deployed over time, taking the numbers from the previous chart, taking the hourly bot rate from $20 down to $3. So there's deflation in the cost of the bot per hour. You can see the industry revenue goes up to 31 trillion. Okay, if the bots are working 7,000 hours a year, the industry profit at the net margin by 2040 is 16 trillion a year. And the PE by then has come way down from 200 down to 36. And the industry market value is $500+ trillion.
Half a quadrillion. That's crazy. Wow.
So feel free to adjust these numbers any way you want. Again, it's just math. It's just a spreadsheet.
Not financial advice, guys. Just
not financial advice.
Just model the model of how things may happen.
We don't know if Tesla will be successful. We don't know if they'll be, have any kind of market share. They may have 1% of the market for all we know. We don't know any of that stuff yet.
Yeah.
My message to your viewers is this is coming. Don't know what these numbers are. Here's an illustration to give you some sense as to what could happen. Again, I'm not wedded to these numbers. I'm not making a prediction here. I'm just showing you, here's the potential growth of this industry. And I believe it'll be the biggest industry in the world fairly quickly.
I have to agree with that too.
And then just showing how the PE ratio comes down with the hourly rate of the bots. Bots will bring on serious deflation, which is great for consumers because everything that the bots then produce, the cost comes down on that too. So as the cost of the bots come down, they get deployed. All these companies save money. They can supply their goods and services for less money. That helps consumers. So if consumer incomes are pressured, if they come down, that may be offset by the deflation of the things that consumers buy.
And what's crazy? This will be made, things will be made in the US and Western worlds at these prices, at these labor cost prices. Meaning that if somehow China can't bring these prices even lower, then you don't need to, manufacturers don't really need to be all in China unless they could bring it even below $1. But I don't know how they would do that. So this will remove one huge geopolitical risk if this actually happens. If this actually happens,
Those are really good points. The idea of comparative advantage kind of goes away as an economic idea because you have to marry that with economic security, and to build bots in your country and make everything that you need from your country is a good thing. We learned the lesson in COVID that outsourcing masks and medical equipment to China may not be a great idea because you may not get what you need, right? Or whatever the product is. And so economic security means that you want to make as much as possible of the critical things in your country. Computer chips is another example. Now, we don't have a solution for that yet, but it highlights the risks of using comparative advantage. Yes, you can make chips cheap in Taiwan and cheap in China and other places, but there are times when there's a risk to doing that. Bots will allow us to make more things locally at a very competitive rate. Yep. So there's a bunch of other charts here. We don't need to go through each one necessarily slide by slide. They're a bit repetitive at this point. If you want to skip ahead to the next chart, that one, I guess, So I did 4 different illustrations here: a slow start, slow ramp, slow start, fast ramp, fast start, slow ramp, fast start, fast ramp. Okay. Just to show what it could look like in different scenarios. And you can see that we get to industry valuations of between 260 trillion to 450 trillion by 2040. And you know what? I don't care about the differences between these 4 scenarios. They all get us to functionally the same place. It's a massive, massive industry, right? But the differences in 2030 are significant. If it's a slow start, slow ramp, it's $1 trillion industry versus 150 trillion if it's a fast start, fast ramp. So depending on your, investment time horizon, if it's a long time horizon, you don't care how long this takes. You'll be fine. If you're more focused on the next decade or next 5 years, then you could drive a bus through different projections. Either way, this industry will grow to become a massive industry industry one day. We just don't know yet what that's going to look like, but it's coming.
Conclusion is the same, yeah.
Conclusion is the same, and you can see here that all the lines kind of converge in 2040. They all get to massive industry market value. Who the winners are, we don't know, but that's where we're headed in the future as intelligent humanoid robots start to walk the earth.
Wow.
Yeah. So did I help you maybe gain a better understanding of the humanoid opportunity?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we covered everything. Well, the numbers are nutty still. I mean, that's still the conclusion. The numbers are nutty, but that's because labor costs can increase GDP through these bots with unlimited labor. Essentially, that's what it is: unlimited labor, and you're gonna create an abundance. That's it. The only thing that comes to mind now is just what happens to humans at this point. It's like if you have this many bots, what happens to the meaning of life? But I'm more optimistic. I think what would mainly happen is that, all these bots come in and they take like all these jobs. More people will have their own business in a way, and then they can have their own bots and they can find their own purpose that way. I am optimistic in that view. What I think will happen is that instead of doing things they don't want to do, they'll be doing things that they want to do.
I think you're right. I think we have the opportunity to improve human existence for a lot of people that today live a pretty tough life, right? We have the ability to bring people up to, maybe not billionaire status in terms of, they're on a super yacht and all that kind of stuff, living that kind of lifestyle, but a very comfortable lifestyle where you don't have to slave away at your job just to make enough money to feed your family, right? And so that's an incredible opportunity. And I think that's something that we have the potential to really dramatically improve humanity in that way. Now, no doubt there will be some people where, they get displaced and there's some transitional challenges here. My view is that in the long term that we all kind of become almost like shepherds for our bots. So we won't be doing the work necessarily that we used to do. We won't have to wash the car and clean the house and do the dishes and fold the laundry. The bots will do that for us, but we are organizing and coordinating and it frees us up to maybe more creative stuff. I don't think we can sit here today and know what life will be like.
Yeah.
It'll change, right? Just like it always has for humanity throughout the ages.
All I know is I remember, I was too young, but I remember it was like 2000, even before that, there were people saying like, the internet is going to come and they're going to take our jobs. But then the internet came and gave so many more jobs and gave so many more opportunities. Like, for example, you can make money on X now. You can make money on YouTube. You can make money with all these social medias without leaving your own home. All you would need is an internet and a laptop and a phone, and you can literally become a millionaire if you really want to.
Yeah.
So I think it's a similar thing with bots with other ways of opportunity.
I agree.
That's how I view it.
I think it's very easy to sit here today and identify the jobs that will be lost. That's very easy. It's impossible to sit here today and identify the jobs that will be created in industries that don't exist.
Yeah, that's absolutely
right. Your social media example, for example, when the internet was first made, no one had a clue that was coming. YouTube and X and so on. So we're absolutely faced with the same situation with bots. However, it's different this time because these are intelligent bots, not just a machine. They will have the capability of virtually doing everything that we are capable of today at some point. And so in that sense, even the future jobs are at risk because the bots can do those too, potentially. But again, we don't know. And so we have to be humble about that and just say, you know what, we'll have to just sort of navigate this as it happens.
Yeah, I think for the intelligence part, there may have to be a cap on it, because if this becomes way too smarter than humans, I think it's going to be a big problem. But I don't know. We'll see how this happens. We'll see how this goes.
It'll be an exciting time.
Oh, man. A very exciting time. Wow. Well, Cern, thank you so much for coming on. This was, now I'm more in line with the bot, with the Robotaxi. Some of the stuff you went more in details with, and even though you mentioned yourself, that's not even as detailed. It's definitely going to help me evaluate the Robotaxi a bit better. And for the bot, now I know more of it. Now I know what to expect.
Well, it was all my pleasure, and I look forward to the next discussions.
Oh, that'd be awesome. That would be flipping awesome. And guys, follow Cern on X. He does these analysis very deeply and in depth. One of the best analysis that I've seen that goes over Tesla or just the robots and robotaxis. Cern, 100%. His link is in the description. And thank you so much, Cern. And
thanks very much. My pleasure.
Definitely have another time once we have more details with the bots and the robotaxis. I'll definitely have you coming back for sure. This stuff is
Sounds
way
great.
too
I look
interesting.
forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you.